My mother's 65th birthday party in Napa Valley was supposed to be a rare family gathering, a night of clinking glasses beneath heavy grapevines and strings of golden lights. But for me, Evelyn Carter, it was a stage for public humiliation, all perfectly orchestrated by my sister, Victoria. A Stanford degree, and now you're back on a farm? Who would have guessed? Victoria laughed, holding her phone inches from my face. Her friends, CEOs, startup founders, burst out laughing, pouring more wine from the expensive Gallo bottle they'd brought. I just stood next to my husband, Kyle, the man who patiently planted every vine on our Bennett vineyards. His quiet gaze rested on my shoulder, but no one could hear my heart trembling with shame. My mother, Patricia, took a sip of wine, her eyes flicking nervously toward the crowd, as if afraid I might embarrass the family. In the middle of the Instagram live stream, my sister had started herself. Giving up your career in city life, just to be a farmer, it's like writing yourself out of your own family. I heard every laugh, every whispered comment, and every pitying look from those around me. Victoria pressed on, her words sharp as a knife. No one ever imagined that one day Evelyn Carter would need help after throwing away her shot at a new life. I just smiled, lifting my chin and looking out over the vineyard. That night, surrounded by twinkling lights and a cloud of contempt, I realized one thing. They all think I'll always be weak. But what they don't know is, when the day comes that someone in this family needs saving, I will be the one holding their fate in my hands. Back when I was living in San Francisco, I was the pride of the entire Carter family. Relatives always mentioned me, Evelyn, as proof of the American dream. A Stanford degree, a job offer from Google, a future wide open. But no one ever knew. I never truly found myself in those bright, crowded parties, where there were always plenty of lights, but never enough real warmth. I met Kyle Bennett on a spring morning at the university's agricultural fair. He wore a simple t-shirt and spoke about soil and grapes with a passion so genuine, it drowned out all the flashy introductions around us. From that day on, my heart started to lean in a new direction, even as my whole family tried to stop me. One Sunday dinner, my mother, Patricia, asked, "Evelyn, are you really going to give up everything just to move back home with a grape farmer?" I answered softly, "I just want the right to choose my own happiness." Kyle and I left the city for Napa Valley, building a life from scratch. We lived in a tiny wooden house on a hillside, mornings in the vineyard, evenings sharing simple meals. In those first days, I missed the city. I missed convenience. But every time I saw Kyle's joy, as he harvested each bunch of grapes, I knew I hadn't made a mistake. There were nights when storms swept through, the vineyard flooded, and we lost our entire first crop. Kyle held me, his eyes sad but steady. "We'll start again, I promise." I nodded, telling myself, nothing is easy when you truly dare to live for yourself. Those were hard years, but that's when I learned the real value of love and determination. We did every job we could. I sold wine at local fairs, taught myself online marketing. Kyle researched new grape varieties, determined to build a real organic farm. I used to think my family would eventually understand. But the calls from my mother and Victoria became less and less frequent. Every visit home, the questions were always the same. "When are you coming back to the city? Do you really plan to live like this forever?" But I kept smiling, reminding myself, true happiness is sometimes as simple as doing what you believe in and being with the one you love, even if the whole world turns its back. After 3 years in Napa Valley, Kyle and I had finally begun to find our footing, even if things weren't exactly comfortable yet. On weekend mornings, I'd get up early to pick grapes in the vineyard, check the wine cellar, and plan new products for the farm. It felt like everything was finally moving in the right direction, until the day I received an email from Bank of America with a cold, blunt subject line, "Notification of new loan disbursement." I froze. I opened the details, $50,000, a personal loan under my name, already transferred to a strange account. I hadn't applied for any loan, hadn't met with a banker, hadn't received a single verification call. Immediately, I called the hotline, forcing myself to stay calm as I asked about the process. The bank representative confirmed everything was in order. The contract was valid, complete with my signature and all my personal information. I racked my memory, trying to recall if I'd signed anything related to a loan. But the only documents I could remember signing were those small do me a favor forms for the family. I had never imagined they'd use my signature for a huge debt like this. For the next few days, anxiety ate at me. I was constantly worried that this money would ruin everything Kyle and I had built. I started reviewing every email, every message Victoria had ever sent. All those rushed requests. Just sign this for me, okay? It's just an asset verification. My company needs to expand. Don't worry, it won't affect you at all. That was when I realized I had trusted the wrong person. One late evening, while Kyle was reorganizing tools in the shed, I decided to tell him everything. He wasn't surprised. He just sighed and looked at me, his voice low and steady. Evelyn, I know you care about your sister, but you don't deserve to be taken advantage of just because you love her. If anything happens, we'll deal with it together. I went silent, torn between love, anger, and helplessness. I called my mother, hoping for comfort, or at least a promise to help resolve things. But she brushed it off. Oh, come on. Siblings help each other. It's no big deal. You're grown now. You'll figure it out. I know you can handle it. That's when I understood. This time, I'd have to carry the burden alone. That night, I couldn't sleep. Confusion and pain filled my heart. It wasn't just the financial loss. It was the feeling of being used by my own family, treated as a lifeline, a safety net whenever someone was in trouble. I'd never felt so alone, in the very home I once believed was my safe haven. In the days that followed, I had to scramble, dealing with the bank, contacting lawyers, trying to control the damage, all while keeping Kyle calm and holding things together at the vineyard. I paid off Victoria's debt, without ever receiving an apology. But from that day forward, half my trust in my family was gone. I told myself, I have to be stronger. Because clearly not everyone deserves my forgiveness. That autumn, I thought I'd finally healed from all the financial blows. But the truth is, my pride was as fragile as a pane of cracked glass. Victoria's invitation arrived, a formal note for her new product launch, along with a message. Mom says you should show up. Don't make things awkward for the family. I wanted to say no. But Kyle encouraged me, and deep down, I didn't want to give my mother another reason to worry. The lobby of the San Francisco Convention Center was flooded with cold white lights and echoing laughter. Victoria stood out from the crowd. Perfect makeup, designer dress, every gesture radiating a confidence and power I'd never touched. My mother, Patricia, sat in the place of honor, always wearing her practiced social smile, her eyes fixed on my sister as if to say, "This is the real pride of the Carter family." Kyle held my hand tight, grounding me as we took seats in a corner, trying to avoid the judgmental stares from Victoria's friends. All successful, all busy talking startups, investments, and markets. Just as the event was wrapping up, Victoria grabbed the microphone and called me on stage. My little sister, Evelyn, is someone who chose a very special path. She gave up every opportunity in Silicon Valley to become a Napa Valley farmer. The whole room erupted in laughter. Some even clapped. Camera flashes went off everywhere. I stood frozen, surrounded by laughter, fighting back tears, searching the rows of faces for even a shred of sympathy, but found none. One of Victoria's big investor friends teased, "Evelyn, I hear you're a whiz at selling wine online, planning an IPO anytime soon." The laughter, the mocking glances, the cold indifference from the entire room made me feel stripped bare in front of a crowd. I steadied myself, forced a smile, and replied, "I'm proud of my choices, even if they're different." Victoria just shrugged, moving on to brag about her $1 million project, not even bothering to hide her satisfaction at pushing me into the center of attention and shame. Back at our table, my mother leaned over and whispered softly, "Family needs to stick together, Evelyn. Don't make a scene. People are watching." I said nothing. All I'd wanted was a hug, a kind word, or just a look of understanding. But there was only emptiness between me and the people I'd once called family. Kyle squeezed my hand tighter, as if to shield me from all the pain in the room, but my pride had been shredded. I left the hall without saying goodbye, walking straight to the car in silence. City lights flashed past the windows, skyscrapers reflected in the crowded streets, and I felt more lost than ever. Kyle broke the silence, his voice warm and steady. You don't have to prove anything to anyone, Evelyn. To me, you'll always be the bravest person I know. That night, I sat on the porch of Bennett Vineyards, looking out at the grapevines cloaked in mist. I thought about my childhood, those days when I believed family meant safety, love, and sharing. But now, after facing Victoria's scorn and my mother's indifference, I understood something new. Blood isn't always the same as kindness. From that day on, I told myself, I have to stand on my own. No more clinging to anyone's approval. I'll live for myself, hold on to my pride and decency, even if the whole world turns its back. And from that night forward, I began to step out of the shadows of humiliation, ready to face injustice and whatever harsh trials lay ahead. 'Cause I know as long as I stand strong, nothing can break me. Less than 6 months after that public humiliation, everything in the Carter family turned upside down. News of Victoria's financial scandal was everywhere. Headlines in every paper across San Francisco and Silicon Valley. Investment forums and social media exploded with updates. Victoria Carter's Finverse caught in credit fraud and illegal fundraising scandal. Shareholders showed up at her house. Angry customers surrounded the office, demanding their money back. Journalists crowded outside the Carter mansion. Relentless questions, camera flashes, photos of Victoria, hair a mess, face stricken, plastered all over the news. I heard it first on the morning news, right after tending the vineyard with Kyle. My hands shook as I watched Victoria on screen, red-eyed, hands trembling as she signed the SEC subpoena. I turned off the TV, silent. I didn't say a word to Kyle. A storm of emotions spun inside me. Sympathy, anger, and yes, a faint guilty sense of satisfaction. I never wanted to see the sister who humiliated me fall so far, but I also couldn't forget all the times she took advantage of my trust, pushed me into debt, never once apologizing. 3 days later, my entire family showed up at Bennett Vineyards. For the first time in years, my mother, father, and even Victoria appeared on my porch, their faces desperate and lost. No more pride, no more icy confidence, just exhaustion, defeat, and the hollow eyes of people who hadn't slept. Victoria walked into the living room, her voice trembling. Evelyn, I know I messed up, but you're the only one who can save me now. Please, can you take out a loan for me? Put your name down as collateral? Help rescue my company? My mother, Patricia, gently took my hand, pleading eyes. Sweetheart, I know you've suffered for this family. But if you don't help your sister now, everything will fall apart. Please, Bennett Vineyards is valuable. Just help the family one last time. I sat there, my heart aching. Memories of betrayal, of being used, of being humiliated in public, all crashed over me like a storm. I looked at Kyle. He didn't say a word, but his eyes told me he would protect me no matter what. I knew this was the moment. The moment to choose between old blood ties and the family I'd built myself. For the first time in my life, I met Victoria's gaze head on. No more hiding. No more pleasing anyone else. I took a deep breath. My voice was calmer than ever. I'm sorry, but I can't risk my family's safety for promises that have already been broken too many times. My assets, my life, they're not anyone's safety net anymore. The room fell into heavy silence. My mother broke down in tears. My father slumped into a chair, head in his hands. Victoria sobbed too, but this time I didn't let myself give in. Kyle squeezed my hand, letting me know he trusted my decision. For the first time I felt strong, no longer the youngest who always paid for everyone else's mistakes. That evening, after my family left, I sat in the vineyard for a long time. Sunset poured over the green vines, and I felt a wave of relief, of freedom, wash over me. Maybe some people would call me cold, heartless even. But only I knew how much I'd endured, and how much I deserved to protect my own happiness. The next morning, I received a message from Victoria. If you don't help, I'll lose everything. But I know you're not the pushover you once were. Still, thank you for everything you've done for me before. I read her message, but I didn't reply. I knew, from that moment on, the chains of the past were finally broken. I was no longer the outsider, no longer anyone's last hope. Now I was just Evelyn, the only one who got to decide the rest of my life. After the fallout, contact between me and the Carter family faded away. And it was at that moment the real test began for me and Kyle. No one left behind us. No safety net, just the two of us and a small vineyard in stormy Napa Valley. That winter, phylloxera swept through, wiping out hundreds of acres at Bennett Vineyards. Old vines we'd tended for years became little more than bare sticks. Days of rain and flooding washed away the old wooden Bennett Vineyards sign at the gate, signaling a beginning more daunting than anything before. Staring at the devastation, Kyle hid his sighs. I broke down in tears, right there on the muddy path. But in the dark, he was the one to spark hope. Do you remember when we first moved here? Things were even worse. We rebuilt once. There's nothing stopping us from starting over again. Debt piled up. Big distributors like Gallo and Mondavi squeezed prices. Families nearby gave up or sold out for cheap. Sometimes I felt completely empty, just wishing I could sleep it all away and escape reality. But every morning seeing Kyle quietly making coffee, pulling on his jacket, heading to the fields with me, I knew I couldn't let go. We made a choice. No more chasing quantity. We'd make handcrafted wine, focusing on quality above all else. I taught myself e-commerce step by step. I learned to sell online, designed our website, took product photos, and wrote every description myself. Night after night, I studied tutorials, learned through YouTube, struggled to edit HTML code, and taught myself how to run Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and even our Amazon store. Kyle handled the technical side, nurturing new grape varieties, studying clean fermentation, changing barrel wood to create unique flavors. Sometimes we argued fiercely, but we never stopped trusting each other. There were moments I lost hope. Once in tears I said, "Maybe we should stop, sell everything, and go live somewhere peaceful, Kyle." He looked at me, eyes unwavering, his warm hand squeezing my shoulder. "I married you because I know you're not someone who gives up. If we go down, let's be the last to fall." Bit by bit, we reached out to retail chains like Whole Foods, sending introduction emails, free samples, persistent calls, sometimes waiting 3 months for a response. I started vineyard tours, hosted cooking workshops, invited bloggers and journalists for free, hoping to spread our brand. I also created a blog called Life Under the Vines, chronicling every step of recovery, the small moments of farm life, from planting to the tiny joys of harvest season. By the third summer, the first seeds of success began to sprout. A group of journalists from Wine Enthusiast visited Bennett Vineyards, took photos and wrote articles praising our creativity and resilience. Just then, Whole Foods replied, inviting us to present our wines. A few weeks later, the first bottle labeled Bennett Vineyards Handcrafted with Courage appeared in upscale stores in San Francisco, Palo Alto, Oakland. It was encouragement, not just financially, but spiritually. Famous restaurants like the French Laundry, Chez Panisse, Zuni Cafe began ordering. For the first time in 7 years, Bennett Vineyards turned a profit. We celebrated, crying and laughing together, thinking of every time we nearly gave up, but somehow pulled through by relying on our own strength. With that small success, I boldly shared our story of failure and rebirth on my blog. I never expected thousands of women across America to write, sending letters and messages of support. They shared stories of loss, unfinished dreams, the constant struggle between family duty and personal ambition. Each letter, every message was another piece of the puzzle that healed me, giving me strength to keep going. We continued the tours, organized Story Under the Vines sessions, where guests could hear our true journey, taste our wine, and share in the local food. Bennett Vineyards became more than just a wine brand. It became a symbol of perseverance and the strength of marriage. One night in the vineyard under the moon, I sat beside Kyle, the scent of new earth and grape flowers drifting by. I told myself, life may knock you down over and over, but as long as you rise again, every hurt becomes a precious lesson. Kyle smiled, put his hand on my shoulder, and softly said, "We have nothing left to lose, only each other. And that's enough." I knew then, not every family is a shelter, but if you're brave enough to build a home from brokenness, you'll find the truest happiness. In the end, Bennett Vineyards rose, not just because of the wine, but because of the faith of two people who never gave up on each other. And I, Evelyn Carter, finally discovered what success truly means. Not money, but the freedom to control your destiny and the gratitude for every day you get to live, to love, and to share. The peaceful days with Kyle didn't last long before I received an unexpected call from the bank. A Bank of America employee wanted me to verify a large loan coming due and asked for updated collateral documents. A surge of anxiety shot through me. I was certain I hadn't signed or agreed to any new mortgages lately, other than a few small investments for Bennett Vineyards. That night, I tossed and turned, determined to get to the bottom of it. The next morning, I contacted Harper & Price Law Group, a renowned firm specializing in financial fraud cases. Attorney Clara Price, a sharp and dedicated woman, took my case. She began combing through every contract, comparing signatures, checking every bank transaction. For weeks, we met with bank representatives, cross-checked every transaction tied to my name, Bennett Vineyards, and even loans under Victoria Carter. Layer by layer, the secrets began to unravel. Attorney Price discovered a string of credit contracts signed with forged signatures, some shaky and uncertain, others nothing like my real handwriting. Among them, Victoria had used my personal information and my land ownership papers to secure loans for her company, Finverse. She even used the deed to Bennett Vineyards as collateral, all without my knowledge. Many of the loan disbursements went directly to Victoria's personal accounts or into shell companies she had set up behind the scenes. Looking at the mountain of paperwork, I was stunned and furious. I remembered all those times Victoria begged me to sign this for her, always insisting it was just asset verification or income proof. I never imagined my trust would become a weapon for her profit. When we had gathered enough evidence, Harper & Price submitted everything to the SEC, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, and filed charges with the San Francisco Financial Crimes Police. The financial investigation team acted quickly. They seized Victoria's assets, froze her accounts, and issued a summons demanding she appear for questioning. On the day Victoria's official investigation began, the media exploded again. Headlines everywhere. Finverse CEO faces charges of fraud, forgery, exploiting her own family. Angry investors sued for damages. Customers flooded Finverse's social media with accusations, demanding their money back. The Carter house, once a symbol of grandeur, had become the epicenter of scandal. My mother, Patricia, was so shocked she ended up in the hospital with high blood pressure. The Carter family was in chaos. Siblings and relatives pointed fingers, some blaming, some confused. That night, Victoria called me from an unknown number, her voice trembling on the other end. "Evelyn, have you really turned your back on me?" I was silent for a long time. The betrayals, the lies, the disregard, the selfishness, all of it had pushed my forgiveness past its breaking point. I knew this time no one could save Victoria. She would have to pay for what she'd done. When autumn came, I sat by the window, watching the golden afternoon light spill over the vineyard rows, my heart both calm and aching. Because no matter how strong the blood ties, in the end, everyone must take responsibility for their own choices. And that was the moment I was truly set free. No longer a victim, no longer anyone's shadow, but a woman who stood up to defend her own worth. Victoria Carter's trial unfolded on a cold, gray winter day in San Francisco, inside the city's central courthouse where the glass facade reflected a gloomy sky and crowds gathering outside. The financial scandal had shaken the business community and media alike. Major news channels broadcast the proceedings live. Every image of Victoria stepping out of a police car, pale, handcuffed, in a faded black business suit, became the new symbol of a fallen star. Outside the courtroom, reporters, shareholders, and even former Finverse investors packed the steps. Their faces held a mix of curiosity, anger, and grim satisfaction. The entire Carter family was there, from my mother Patricia to distant relatives. All signs of past pride were gone. Only exhaustion, worry, and fear in the face of public scrutiny remained. Inside, the air was suffocating. I sat in the back row with Kyle, attorney Clara Price, and the Harper & Price Law Group team. Victoria, at the defendant's table, kept her eyes down, hair a mess, skin drained of color. Across from her, the SEC and city financial investigators sat in silence, their expressions icy. The judge entered. Everyone rose. Silence pressed down. Prosecutors presented their case, layer by layer: forged loan contracts, suspicious wire transfers, bank records bearing faked signatures, and all the evidence of how Bennett Vineyard's assets were used for fraud. Each secret exposed, each document shown, the room's gaze narrowed to a single point: Victoria. Finverse shareholders stood in protest, demanding justice. The press captured every moment, cameras clicking nonstop. During cross-examination, the prosecutor called me to the stand. My heart pounded, but my mind was sharp. I answered each question clearly, offering every piece of evidence we'd gathered: the forged mortgage agreements, the wire records, bank confirmations, even Victoria's emails to partners explaining her unauthorized use of Bennett Vineyards, all without my knowledge. And then, in the middle of it all, my mother Patricia broke down. She rushed forward, grabbing my hand, sobbing. "Evelyn, please, withdraw the complaint. Save this family. Victoria's your sister. If the world finds out you turned against your own blood, how can any of us go on?" I looked at her, tears stinging my eyes and my throat tight. But all the pain, all the betrayal, all the years of being overlooked, they rose up, giving me a strange, powerful clarity. My answer was steady, voice calm but cold. "You reap what you sow. If Victoria doesn't take responsibility, more people will be hurt. If I back down now, how many more will suffer like I did?" The room went silent, except for my mother's sobs and the relentless shutter clicks of reporters. The judge called for order and let Victoria's lawyer make one last plea. But no excuse, no talk of financial pressure, mental stress, or keeping the family together could outweigh the evidence. The forgeries, the illicit deals, the lives upended. Finally, the judge ruled. Victoria Carter was found guilty of financial fraud, forgery, and the illegal use of others' assets for personal gain. Her personal property was frozen to pay back investors, while Bennett Vineyards was released from the false mortgages and debt, all thanks to the swift actions of me and my legal team. Victoria was led away immediately, her face ghostly, eyes wild as she looked back at the family one last time. The news spread instantly. Headlines, television, investment forums exploded. The Carter family became a lightning rod for public criticism. My mother fell ill, relatives scattered, some blaming me, others lost in despair. A few even called me ungrateful, the one who destroyed the family's name. But Kyle always stood beside me, holding my hand in every weak moment, reminding me of sleepless nights, of tears shed after being abandoned by my own flesh and blood. After the trial, Kyle and I returned to Napa Valley. The old wooden gate of Bennett Vineyards felt like an entrance to another world, one of honesty and peace, untouched by lies or manipulation. I sat at our kitchen table, writing a long letter to my mother, pouring out all the pain, regret, and hope that maybe someday my family would understand why I could not save my sister at the cost of my own life and honor. Once I was the overlooked one, the shadow behind a brilliant sister, the disappointment in my mother's eyes. But in the end, I was the one who decided the family's fate, not with revenge, but with truth and unshakable resolve. There was no fairy tale ending, but I had reclaimed my freedom, my peace, and above all, the right to control my own destiny, even if it meant sacrificing everything I once called family. After that fateful trial, it felt as if my life had turned a new page. In the early days, newspapers all over San Francisco and Napa Valley ran stories about the overlooked younger sister who turned the tables and saved the family legacy. Bennett Vineyards was praised as a symbol of rebirth and the strength of perseverance. Some people were curious, some admired me, and, of course, there were whispers that I had been too ruthless with my own flesh and blood. But I knew no one but me had the right to judge my journey. Only I understood the price I'd paid for my freedom and peace, earned through so many tears and bitter nights. In the days that followed, I poured myself into the vineyard, planning the next harvest with Kyle. The small team at Bennett Vineyards, those who had stood by me through the hardest times, had truly become my second family. Together, we built something beautiful with our own hands and willpower. We expanded the vineyard, improved our production process, and developed new lines of handcrafted wine the press began calling the essence of Napa Valley. Late in the afternoons, Kyle and I would walk through rows of heavy grapes, talking strategy, tasting each one to savor the sweetness of hard-earned success and honesty. I continued to write my blog, Life Under the Vines, sharing not just farming tips, but my story of stepping out from the shadows. Many women wrote to thank me, telling me they saw themselves in my journey, once weak, once overlooked, having to rise on their own to find happiness. One evening, I received a long letter from my mother. Patricia wrote about her regret and the emptiness she felt after the Carter family fell apart after Victoria's arrest. She asked for forgiveness and hoped for a chance to rebuild from the beginning. I read her letter again and again, tears sliding down my cheeks. But I knew some wounds cannot be healed by apologies alone. I wrote back with a single line, brief but resolute. I have chosen peace. I no longer wish to return to the past. When autumn arrived, Bennett Vineyards glowed with the golden hue of ripe grapes, and our team was busy preparing for the biggest harvest we'd ever had. Kyle and I stood together on the hillside, looking out toward the horizon as the sunset bathed the valley in brilliant gold. In that moment, I felt a happiness I couldn't name. Not victory, not revenge, but true liberation, being in control of my life, living by my own values. All the pain and loss had become the strong fibers of my soul. I smiled, placed my hand on Kyle's shoulder, and whispered, "We've come far enough that there's no darkness left to fear." And I knew no matter what the future held, I was stronger than anyone who had ever underestimated me. I used to believe my worth depended on meeting other people's expectations, my mother's, my sister's, and all those harsh judgments from the world. But as I grew older, I realized the most precious thing isn't praise or the spotlight. It's the peace you find within yourself. It's waking up every morning knowing you're living true to who you are, with no emotional debts to anyone else. There are days when I still remember the past, my childhood among the grapevines, the dreams that never came true, and all the times I felt small because someone else said I wasn't enough. But if not for those scars, I would never have had the strength to walk this path. So, to anyone who's lost or hurting because of their own family, you don't have to live by anyone's expectations but your own. Real success is holding on to your peace, daring to face and rise above your circumstances, not being celebrated or chasing after what others think you should be. After everything, I chose to found the Empower Her Rural Fund, a foundation supporting American rural women to launch sustainable businesses. I believe every woman, no matter where she is or what she does, deserves the right to choose and create her own happiness. I want you to know, no matter how many times you fall, as long as you keep standing up, you'll always find your way. To me, family isn't always a shelter from pain. Sometimes it's the very place where you hurt the most. But if you're brave enough to leave, strong enough to build your own home, you'll discover that true peace comes from living authentically and independently, not from what anyone else says about you. If you've ever been judged or dismissed by your family or by society because you chose a different path, share your story in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Heartless Revenge so we can inspire each other to live boldly and believe everyone deserves to be themselves.